And welcome everybody to Keeping It True by You Saints here on the True by You Sports Media Network. Now, one thing we're going to preface this episode with, this is coming out on Tuesday, September 10th, with everything going on with Tropical Storm Hurricane Francine heading towards the Gulf Coast. If you do need any information on that, we do want to make sure that you're aware that we are posting some of the latest NOAA updates over on True Bayou Media. Yes, True Bayou Media's page on Instagram and Facebook. If you need to access any of that information, we want to make sure everybody's safe, everybody's getting to the place where they need to be to best be able to handle this weather event. And of course, we'll be looking forward to being able to get content and good spirits back with everybody as soon as the storm passes. We are very much looking forward to sharing those times after as we begin to pick up whatever is shuffled in that process. But this is Keeping It True by You Saints. So for those of you who are looking for Saints news, here you are. It is a nice feeling to be able to come and talk about a team who did everything right. It is nice to be able to talk about a team who did everything in a way that was very visually appealing, in a way that was very well balanced, that felt like it was intentional, with great flow, with great regard. And that's what we saw from Dennis Allen, Clint Kubiak, Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara. It was very nice to see him out there. And the rest of the Saints team, I mean, the defense was playing incredible. You know, Dennis Allen largely leads that defensive effort as a defensive-minded head coach, and we saw a lot that was going on with all the interceptions, the forced fumbles, Tyron, of course, getting one knocked out there. That was nice to see. Honey Badger still alive and well. Everybody has something nice to look at, something nice to feel good about. We take a look as we are beginning to transition from week 1 to week 2. Of course, there's not much we really need to recap in a game like what we had against the Panthers. I think that is a franchise that needs to have some serious, internal discussions on what is the reality of their program this year. That could be a team that fails to get more than about 2 wins, I believe. They're going to have a very rough time with the way how things are currently laid out for them. But that's not necessarily a Saints problem, and of course they do get to play them one more time. What it is that by every metric available, the Saints are in first place in the NFC South, and whenever the Saints are in first place in the NFC South, we celebrate here on this channel. So with that said, week 2. It's a little too early to talk about the details of the game, but let's talk about some of the major factors that are going to play a part in that game. First of all, as we saw some of the first practice reports coming out this week, we saw that Marshawn Lattimore is still dealing a little bit with a hamstring tweak, as it's being called, from week 1's game. He says that it's minor, and it seems as though it will not leave him inactive for week 2, so we're going to address that as it is. He's listed questionable. Beyond that, you have a continuing developing situation in the wide receiver depth department with A.T. Perry, and he's currently technically listed as questionable, but he's not practicing right now due to a hand injury, which we understand based off what we've heard is not broken, but it has issues, but it's healing. So with that, whatever the medical staff deems is necessary, he's not playing at even 50% enough to get to practice, enough to be able to put that effort towards a game. So we'll see if he's able to heal up for this week, but as of right now, it seems as though he won't be. And then you have some other players that are continuing to have some lingering issues from the preseason. Folks like DeMarco Jackson dealing with some calf injuries, as well as Kalen Saunders. You're seeing that for a second week in a row, but no major injuries, no season enders, nothing like that following week 1, which is always good to see. And the situation is similar for the Cowboys. Not much going on there. They have 2 tight ends that are still listed questionable. We'll see if those guys play. I probably would say as of right now that's likely the case, as well as just some other minor tweaks here or there. They do have 2 players on IR, one on a soon-to-return IR status, one that's on a late season or out-of-season status for the IR, but I don't see either of those guys playing. Now, This is a matchup that I feel as though is a little bit strange. It's a little bit unique because I look at the lines and they're there on the screen for you. I look at that and I see, okay, Saints are 230. Saints are, 7-point dogs. Okay, I can see, yeah, it's about a field goal difference, if you want to call it that, plus the home field advantage. But this doesn't feel that way to me. And a lot of people would say, well, you have all the talent on the other side. You have a CD Lamb, you have this, you have that. And I agree with you. I agree. There's a lot of talent on that Dallas offense. At the same time, I look at Dak Prescott and I look at what he's given me. I look at this not only from the perspective of last week, which Derek Carr flat out outperformed him, but again, it's against the Panthers. We'll see what actually happens. I'll take the grain of salt and I'll hold on to it for you all. But what is even more impactful than that is that I look at Dak Prescott and, I think it's understood that I'm a relatively avid fantasy player. I'm an avid watcher of the game. I'm an avid studier of the game of football. And his performances, as of late, we're going back a season or two here, have not been earth-shattering. They've been very respectable, but, is it any different than last 4 weeks of last season when Derek Carr led the league as far as a top 5 quarterback? I don't see it being that much different. So you have an aging back in Ezekiel Elliott, who, while technically is relatively similarly aged to Alvin Kamara, is playing at a very different pace these days, but still productive no less. Then as far as your receivers on the offensive side, if we're just going head-to-head here, who can outscore who? I'll take CeeDee Lamb over Olave or Rashid, but I think it could be to case to where if you put those together, you could get a similar result as far as production goes. The biggest thing here to note is that this is looking via ESPN. Their matchup predictor has the Cowboys as about a 60-40 favorite, and obviously with the odds set where they are, it's looking to be a Dallas about touchdown favorite here. I'm going to take it with a big grain of salt. That might be one, if you've been looking for an opportunity to get in on some action here this year with the Saints, this is one you got to look at because this is a pretty big number there. Blake Grupe was very successful in week 1, had some great kicks, kept the team putting points up, successful drives, something that, of course, obviously has much discussion going on in another part of the state of Louisiana with successful drives. But nevertheless, when you see a kicker that goes out there and gets you kick after kick from 50+, that's why the man won the job. And I was never really too concerned with the challenger, but, you got to play it out, and that's what you do in preseason. You let people fight for their job, and Blake Grupe's continuing to show you why he is capable of doing that job, and did a quite a good job in week 1, and he should have little to no difference in week 2, in my opinion. So, going to Jerry World, taking a look, I personally think that this is one that maybe the numbers are a little bit off on. Maybe the numbers aren't quite there. One thing that we do need to be logical and objective on, but I don't think it should impact gameplay necessarily, is the fact that the Saints will have to consider what happens with the storm here that's passing through. As of right now, I can't necessarily say what part of Louisiana will be hit, but most likely we'll know a lot more by the time you're listening to this. So, nevertheless, I think they'll have a full operational day on Tuesday, and then Wednesday may have to be some type of modified hunker down day. I don't think the team is going to leave town early. That wasn't something that was really discussed. Time will tell, though. Dennis Allen made a comment that I think is very fair. The Saints are the best in the league at dealing with natural weather events. It's not something that they've never had to deal with before. We saw the preseason game less than a year ago with the Rams, and how they had to plan for that. Even when the storm wasn't even in their backyard, they went and played there. this is something that I think won't be an issue for game week, but it will for the game day itself, I should say. But yes, it will impact the weekly schedule. Hopefully, not as much as some would make it out to be. We certainly hope it's a minor event. We don't want anything too major going on in the state, in the region. But nevertheless, that's where you're at sitting there. Let's look at one little thing here that I think is valid. You look at that Dallas game that they played against the Browns. You're seeing struggles from Deshaun Watson. There was not a lot going on for either side of the ball offensively. Obviously, the Cowboys were able to put up more when it comes to points. But, I mean, I'm looking at Dak at 19 of 32 for 179, and I'm looking at Deshaun Watson 24 of 45 for 169. 2 interceptions there, both 1 touchdown. Neither one of those are exactly going to light my eyes up and make me say, wow, that's a really impressive performance. At the same time, Derek Carr had 200 yards, so he's not doing that either necessarily, but it was efficient. It was an extremely high quarterback rating on those 200 yards, so I'll take it. Now you have CeeDee Lamb. You have CeeDee Lamb, who is one of the better in the league. You have him, and, you know, we're going to assume Marshawn Lattimore plays. You could also see any other type of situation where you're going to see some of the other Saints secondary players maybe switching over or something of that case. Alontae Taylor had a good game. Will Harris had a good game. Honestly, I don't think I worry too much about Dallas's overall offensive core. But, you know, we talk about CeeDee Lamb a lot. Let's go and talk about some of the other ones there. Brandon Cooks, of course, the one that theoretically got away from the Saints, but it didn't seem like it hurt anybody's feelings at the time. He's usually due for 1 good touchdown a game, particularly in a situation like this. So if I had to assume, it's possible that we'll see some major plays from Brandon Cooks. But like I say, I think that's a situation where with the young guys in the Saints secondary, you can get a step on him and you have a good chance to be able to do something there. Other than that, it's a lot of, whole staff type of approach, throwing the ball wherever you can find an opening. So I'm not too worried about that there. You look at the Dallas rushing effect, you obviously have Zeke taking at least a chunk of carries, not as much as he did in his prime, if you will, but the highest average yards per carry was on CeeDee Lamb pitches and end arounds, 8.3 there. Everyone else, literally the wide receivers, were the 2 highest yards per gain. I'm again, none of this is necessarily opening my eyes to understand why the line is at where it's at. I'm not saying sharp money's at the Saints, but think of it in that way. And we obviously know the Saints' problems. We know what could happen if Derek Carr has a rough start, gets injured. I'm trying not to speak it into existence, but we know it exists, so let's not pretend it doesn't. But honestly, this is a game that we're going to be looking very closely at. Like I say, with the storm coming, we're going to do our very best to provide semi-regular content schedules. But when the hurricane winds are coming in South Louisiana and the power goes out, It's going to be end of the day at that point, and I can do some recorded stuff. I'll be able to get some things maybe for the backlog, but my goal for you, just a bit as a programming note here on the network, is we're going to get True by You Sports Media Primetime out. That is going to be a guarantee. Everything else will be bonus, a little bit of lanyap for you this particular week, just with everything going on. We're going to try and get as much out though as we can. So with that, we end this midweek episode of Keeping It True by You Saints. A very short, sweet episode today. Don't need to get too complicated with things. I think this game says a lot about what it's going to be right on the face. I don't think you really have to dig too deep to get the storylines here. And to be honest with you, the Cowboys are facing a bit of an easier schedule following the Saints as the vice versa. They'll take on the Ravens, which will be a tough one the following Sunday, but then they get games against New York and Pittsburgh to follow. So a little bit more favorable for that 3-2 look compared to the Saints, which are fighting to keep it at 2-3, if not potentially 3-2 by some much stronger performance. But we saw a stronger performance than anyone was expecting, and like I said, brought a good smile to a lot of people's faces. And remember, the next upcoming games for the Saints will be Dallas, Philly at home in the Dome, followed by away to Atlanta and away to Kansas City. Definitely some difficult environments, that Kansas City being a night game on a Thursday. Oh, the fun that will be had there. But that's what you have to look forward to. I'm certainly looking forward to it, and I think it'll be a good time for everybody, a chance to really get out and see Monday night there for that Saints and Chiefs game. Don't want to confuse anybody, but I think it'll be a good opportunity to see what this team really is. Carolina is a good chance to make everybody feel good, but a Dallas victory would show everybody that it's okay to feel confident again. And if we can feel confident, there's going to be a lot of people that are on the way to Airline Drive to tell Derek Carr personally that they apologize. I do not think that necessarily we need to go that far yet, but I do think you have to give the credit where credit is due. An excellent game was played on Sunday, and we'll certainly see what comes up this next Sunday. Remember, stay safe, everybody. Major event coming through the region here, and we'll be keeping you up to date with all the weather alerts over on True Bayou Media on the meta platforms of Facebook and Instagram. We'll also probably, once it gets a little bit closer to crunch time, get that over on X and potentially TikTok as well. I've been your host today, Donald, and I enjoy hosting every single episode here for all of you in the Who Dat Nation. Until our next episode, let's stay dry and let's go Saints. Have a good one, everybody. This has been a True Bayou Media production. This show is for entertainment purposes only and does not render legal or financial advice. Remember to bet responsibly. Distribution of this podcast is prohibited without the express written consent of True Bayou Media or its subsidiaries. Thanks for being true by us. We can't wait until next time we keep it true by you.